Welcome to Atlantic Technology. Who is Atlantic Technology? It's a good question. I'm going to give you a little bit of a background on who we are as a company and what we do. Atlantic was founded in 1989 by Peter Tribeman, who's a long-standing, well-known industry icon. And Peter kind of helped push the entire industry along in the home theater direction. Atlantic is a group of industry veterans, engineers, hobbyists, enthusiasts who have really come together and produced what we think, quite modestly, is some of the best, most interesting and satisfying equipment available to you today on the market. We take a slightly different approach at Atlantic. We like to think things through and decide how the product is actually going to be used in someone's home, how the product is really going to be addressed and approached by customers. We're enthusiasts and we know this stuff inside and out, but we also recognize that most people don't know it inside and out, and we try to anticipate the way they're really going to use the product and really going to experience the product in their homes. And with that in mind, we try to keep three things in mind at all times when we're designing our products. Number one, of course, is great sound. We want our products to be terrific performers, to sound great, to really convey the excitement and the immediacy and the vibrancy of a live performance. The next thing that we try to do, and we'll go into this in more detail as I talk about some of the specific products later on, is we're very innovative. And I don't mean innovative just from an engineering standpoint. I mean innovative in terms of trying to anticipate the problems and the issues that the average consumer faces in their home and coming up with innovative ways to solve those problems and solve those issues. And the third thing that we do, and this is very important to us, and I'll come back to this one again and again to the point where it almost gets a little boring, but it's important. And what we try to do, and we're very cognizant of, is we try to be very consistent. If something is good at one price point, it's good at another price point, and it's good at another price point. So you don't find with Atlantic that you only get the so-called good stuff when you pay top dollar. The materials, the design approach, everything we do with our products, we try to be as consistent as we can from the least expensive product we make to the most expensive product we make. And I'm going to give you some examples of that. First of all, I've got to say that our design approach seems to have made an impression on the reviewers and the audio press and the critics out there, because we've received dozens upon dozens of great reviews and accolades and Best Buy awards. And you can look all those up on our website, because we very, very immodestly reproduce all of our great reviews. And I'll let you read those, and it's some good reading. But it's nice to be recognized by other people for your efforts. And the sound is really good, and what I'm going to do now is I want to show you some of the consistent approaches we take with our products that make them better. This is our least expensive center channel speaker. It's called the 1200C. And this is something as innocent looking as a grill. But this is a nice perforated metal grill. It's very, very high quality. It's held on to the front baffle by small magnets, what we call neodymium magnets, very powerful, very small magnets. And so instead of the usual inexpensive, kind of cheap-looking plastic grill with a stretched piece of cloth over it, we use a nice high-quality metal grill. And that's true of the 920, it's true of the 3200, it's true of the 8200 system. Our top-of-the-line system also uses the exact same kind of grill. It's one example of the kind of consistency that we have from one product to the other, from inexpensive to most expensive. Staying with the center channels. You know, the center channel is actually the most important product in a home theater system, because the center channel, depending on how the soundtrack was mixed, the center channel speaker actually handles somewhere between 60 and 80% of the soundtrack information. So it's a very, very critical speaker. And if there's any speaker that a manufacturer should really pay attention to, it's which one? It's the center channel, because the center channel contains so much of the information. So the speaker that reproduces that channel really has to be a good speaker. So there are things that we do with the center channel that make it a bit better than average. First of all, because of the modern demands of cosmetics in the living room, most center channel speakers are like this. They're horizontal. Very, very rarely, if ever, do you see a center channel speaker that's vertical, kind of perched on top of a television. It just doesn't happen. People don't want to see a vertical center channel speaker perched on top of a TV. So the more decor conscious person in the household said, hey, no vertical center channel speakers going on my TV. It's got to be a horizontal speaker, which is fine. If it's got to be horizontal, it's got to be horizontal. But really good speakers like to be vertical. If you look at any really good speaker, 920, 3200, 8200, they're always vertical. And that's because the drivers, the woofers and the tweeters, sound better when they're vertical. They tend to have what engineers call wider horizontal dispersion. That means from one side of the room to the other. When the drivers are vertical like this, they'll spread the sound out over a wider angle horizontally. So people sitting in this chair, people sitting in that chair, Uncle Al falling asleep in that chair. If he was awake, he would hear things perfectly, even on the side of the room, because of the vertical array of drivers. But center channels, like we just talked about, need to be horizontal. So it's kind of a compromise sonically. And what most manufacturers do is they take a speaker like this and they just put it on its side so the tweeter is right between the two woofers. And that's not such a good thing sonically. Again, I'm not going to take you to engineering school. I'm going to leave that to other people. But there is a compromise when you have a tweeter right in between two woofers and everything is horizontally arrayed. You don't get that nice, wide, even sound coverage from one side of the room to the next. So what we do on all of our center channel speakers is we raise the tweeter up and bring the two woofers as close together as possible. That makes the acoustic center of the woofers here, right in between them, and the tweeter directly above it. So sonically, the center channel speaker, even though it's horizontally arrayed, emulates the sound of a vertical array, and you get much broader horizontal dispersion. It's a little acoustic trick. There are other things at play. Again, this is not engineering 101, so I'm not going to take you down the real technical road and explain all the little niggling details. You have to trust me on this. When a center channel speaker is designed like this, it sounds better to people in the room than it does if the tweeter were directly in between two more widely spaced woofers. And that's one of the things that we do that's consistent on all of our speakers, from the least expensive to the most expensive. So the materials are the same, the design approach is the same. Those are things that we do because it's important to us that things be consistent and everybody gets something good regardless of what they're paying. Also, you'll notice that all of our tweeters are in these machined aluminum faceplates. They've got a little what we call a horn arrangement right near the tweeter dome, which aids in the dispersion. Again, dispersion is a fancy word for sound coverage. It makes the tweeter cover the room in sound more evenly. And all of our speakers have that kind of arrangement, from the 920 on up to the 8200. Again, this is the 920's grill, same kind of high-quality metal grill. Center channel speaker, again, it's the most important speaker in the entire system. So all of our center channel speakers, in addition to having the acoustic array designed as I just described, also have two controls on the back. We have what's called a high frequency level control, which adjusts the level of the tweeter. Sometimes a soundtrack is recorded so it's a little bright sounding when it's recorded in a large commercial sound hall and then transmitted into a smaller living room. That center channel where the dialogue is can sound a little harsh, so you have a high frequency level control that will bring that tweeter level down. On the other hand, you could have a very heavily damped room with a lot of draperies and thick carpeting and overstuffed furniture, and since the center channel is where the dialogue is taking place, sometimes you might want to lift those high frequencies up. So there is a position for each of those circumstances on the control of the high frequency level. All of our center channel speakers have it. And there's another control that's very important, and that's called boundary compensation. What is boundary compensation? What is a boundary, and why the heck do you have to compensate for it? A boundary is any large surface. A boundary is a wall, a boundary is a floor, and when you bring a speaker closer to a boundary, it affects how it sounds. I mean, I'm speaking to you now, and it sounds just fine, but if I bring a boundary around my voice like this, all of a sudden it sounds a lot different than it does like this. So boundaries affect the way speakers sound. And when you put a center channel speaker in an entertainment unit and there's shelf dividers on either side of it and shelves above and below it, that's going to affect how the speaker sounds, as opposed to if the speaker was on a stand well away from room boundaries. So in order to keep the center channel sound nice and clear, we have a boundary compensation control to compensate for the nearby proximity of boundaries. It makes the center channel sound as good as it can sound under all circumstances. And that's very important. This is the kind of thing that separates Atlantic Technology as a company that kind of gets it.